Okay, you just saw it. This trio of characters that you haven't met in-game just appeared for another cinematic. Looked pretty cool, they did something, but maybe you're wondering, what the hell's actually going on? Today, you're going to learn the full story so far, so that when 10.1 starts, you will know exactly what is going on, why it's happening, and what to look out for. In opening the way, we see Farak just turn into a ball of fire and fly straight into the floor. But to understand why he did that, we've got to go back in time tens of thousands of years ago. Azeroth had been overran by these Void guys, but then these Order guys, who we call the Titans, kicked them out. They cleaned the place up a bit, and then they left this lot in charge, the Titan Keepers. The Titans disappeared off into space and promptly got themselves killed. Ish. Now, way back in Azeroth, their keepers just got to work, bringing their creator's order about on the world, cleansing it of the remaining void corruption and acting as its guardians. You see, the world has a super powerful being at its center called Azeroth. The Titans think that Azeroth is one of them, and they want to nurture her. Now enter this guy, Tyr, and his boss, Odin. So Odin asked Tyr to head to the Isles and to get the Halls of Infusion up and running. They essentially would work to purify the corruption out of the land's water, and instead infuse them with order. Yep, they're putting frickin' chemicals in the water that are turning the local inhabitants towards the Titans' way of thinking. And mixed up with all of this, experiments, because if you get high renown with the Dragonscale expedition, you'll find yourself venturing into Tyr's old laboratory, and that is where the dots connect. And a quick thing, it's almost the end of the month, and that's why I've got this really awesome coin. We made a coin, amongst the other things that are on our Patreon loot tier for this month. So if you'd like to get the big old bundle of merch, including our very, very snazzy collectible coin, you can check that out on Patreon, where we've also got more behind-the-scenes content, early access videos, and yeah, we're just pumping real hard on that stuff. So if you want to support us, then the link is down below. Thank you, and let's get into some real juicy lore. Okay, so we all know the story of the dragon aspects. One day, a terrible proto-dragon called Galakron grew powerful beyond all comprehension, and consuming all around it, even its own kin, truly threatened the world itself. Now, a desperate Tyr pleaded with a group of young proto-drakes, right, for help, and eventually they all banded together and defeated the terrible Galakron. Those proto-drakes, Malygos, Ysera, Alexstrasza, Neltharion, and Nosdormu, were uplifted, transformed by the magic of order into the noble forms that we know today. But where did that Galakron come from? I mean, did he just get really hungry one day? Well, this is where those dots connect, because venturing into Tyr's old lab, we discover consoles containing information on the aspects that we know. Yet venture deeper and we curiously see another bunch of information pertaining to elementally infused proto-drakes. This is curious to the point of seeming like Tyr himself created the incarnates that we know today, and it sure seems that Tyr had been experimenting with infusing things into these proto-dragons. Returning to past lore, we actually had already known that Tyr felt guilty about the Galakron situation, and essentially all signs do point towards Tyr perhaps infusing Galakron with decay, inadvertently creating the beast that he would later enlist the dragon aspects to help destroy. Of course, with the aspects uplifted, them and Tyr had a real good relationship for a while, but eventually Tyr ended up dying for what he believed in. Not only had he seemingly stumbled upon things that he shouldn't really know, he also caught the attention of a now old god corrupted Loken. Loken is another one of those Titan Keepers, and Yogg-Saron got to him. Loken ensured Tyr's destruction. So Tyr died. Some time passed, and at some point in the timeline, those other proto-drakes, likely the ones that we see in Tyr's lab, rebelled. They despised how the Titan Keepers had twisted dragonkind into the form of the Titan Keepers' choosing. Right? One designed to uphold the Titans' ideals. Dragons that were supposed to lay their lives down to protect someone else's vision. So no, the incarnates thought, screw this. They wanted an Azeroth for Azerothians, pure dragons to reign supreme. And so the Dragon Wars began. A lot of bad things happened on all sides. Neltharion bred an army of Drakthir to do his bidding, but when those Drakthir failed, he turned to even darker means which would rapidly turn him into the Deathwing that we would go on to know. And from what we understand, the primal incarnates, which is of course Raszageth, who we defeated as the first boss of Dragonflight, plus those 3 other characters we just saw in the cinematics, Farak, Iridikron, and Viranoth, they waged war against the Aspects, only to eventually be defeated. This is how it went down. Raszageth was imprisoned by Neltharion on the Forbidden Reach when she foolishly attempted to solo him, but it did force him to finally give in to the Void to get the upper hand. Next, Farak and Viranoth were captured and put into the Vault of the Incarnates. And after a monstrous struggle, Iridikron was finally subdued and imprisoned alongside his family for some 20,000 years. Alexstrasza, leader of the Aspects, basically just couldn't bring herself to kill the Incarnates because they were her clutchmates. Before she looked the way that she does, she was just another proto-dragon, kind of like they were, right? They did go back, they were in a way family. But while she saw this as a mercy, it's not how the Incarnates saw it. They saw it as torture. After their imprisonment, they believed that death would have been a mercy. But it was not a mistake that they would let Alexstrasza get away with. And with all that, you actually have the backstory. So now, today's events. The Drakthir, Deathwing soldiers, arose from their stasis, confused and alone, only to soon meet Rathian and Abyssian, who had actually travelled to their home while chasing down the Primalist threat led by Kurog Grimtotem. The Primalists successfully freed Raszageth, who is the incarnate whose temperament very much matches her stormy aspect. With her came an impenetrable storm that cloaked the Forbidden Reach. And while we would later go on to defeat Raszageth, she held out for long enough to do a bunch of damage to us and also to free her kin. So by the end of the Vault of the Incarnates, Raszageth was dead, but Iridikron, Viranoth, and Farak were free. After speaking to the Aspects, we end up learning that this trio's dangerous, but especially Iridikron, because he went beyond his side's rejection of the Titans, right? It wasn't just an ideological dispute. He embraced war. He lived for the fight. He turned foul, and before the end, he made a terrible bargain to keep his side alive. A big question then is, who did he make a bargain with? If he made a bargain with Void, as Deathwing did, then I think that would really be quite boring. So I have to assume that whatever he made a bargain with is pretty damn different to the Void. We don't know yet, but we're sure to find out. Alexstrasza believes that the other incarnates do not actually know how depraved Iridikron is. Which, I mean, seriously, if you look at Farak, I mean, if the other bad guys don't get how evil Iridikron is, then what does Iridikron actually have planned? Who did he make that bargain with? Who's going to be calling in their debt for all that power that he has? Regardless, their sister had died, and they couldn't just devour the hearts of her murderers. Iridikron is too smart for that. He knows we're really strong. He said he would not underestimate the Aspects. So, as Raszageth's storm receded, they vowed revenge and set about their plan. They have two goals. First, to divide the Aspects and their allies, and second, to claim enough power to destroy the whole lot of us. Each incarnate has a role to play in this plan, beginning with Farak and the return to the Forbidden Reach. That is where the division of the Aspects began, where Neltharion slowly was becoming Deathwing, and it's where the Incarnates would find the key to their plan. Quite literally the key, the way to Aberrus, which is Deathwing's hidden laboratory. Deep beneath the earth, this is where he performed his darkest experiments. It's where he perfected a new form of magic called shadowflame, a mix of elemental fire and shadow. And that is the power that Farak is tasked with claiming. But almost as important is opening the way for Sarkareth and his sundered flame, essentially Drakthir who reject us and really just believe that power is their birthright, for them to go and chase after their legacy, to chase after the power that Neltharion had hoarded in Aberrus. Because at the end of the day, the more chaos the Sundered Flame cause, the better it is for the Incarnates' plan. Veranoth said herself, in Farak's wake, that the Drakthir will succumb to the temptation of Aberrus. The Incarnates knew then that they were being followed. They let the Drakthir see them. They believe that there is a darkness in the Drakthir, a darkness that we will see be extracted, come to the front in Aberrus. Now that darkness likely is the void and the corruption that Neltharion eventually gave into. So we will see Sarkareth embrace that legacy, and that is where divisions will truly set in. But before any of this patch 10.1 stuff happened, they had to actually find Aberrus. Veranoth quickly deciphered the location of Aberrus, and the Incarnates opened the way with this pretty epic scene of Farak diving through the earth to claim the Shadowflame. The thing is, this is corrupting stuff. Just look at this early experiment. Like Deathwing, it needed metal plates just to keep its form. And as strong as Farak is, this stuff is going to change him. All at Iridikron's command. Orchestrating this, Iridikron, the Earth Incarnate, seems smart, but evidently is willing to essentially sacrifice Farak, right? Even his own brother, for the destruction of the aspects. So what's key here is that we may not even end Farak in Aberrus. He's not a raid boss. Where will he meet his end? Will it be in the campaign? Will it be in a later patch? Perhaps the mega dungeon of patch 10.1.7? Something tells me Iridikron has a plan for the power that his family is collecting. And that brings us to Veranoth's job. Just what could Iridikron expect? And where does the Incarnate story go next? What should we be on the lookout for? Veranoth is clearly being set up as the schemer, the smart one who worked out Neltharion's cipher to find Aberrus. But her mission is so much greater than just figuring stuff out. She is after the Emerald Dream. We are nearly certain that is where we're going to be going in patch 10.2 with this data-mined Emerald Dream gear that appeared one day. We may even learn how we get there in patch 10.1 if a certain leak ends up being the case. Now this is all quite fascinating because it actually slots together with other things that we've seen. And the thing we've seen is ice. Yes, it should be no surprise that ice primalists have been attacking the Onaran Plains and the Emerald Sanctuary. You may have missed it if you didn't do that quest, but they have been. They are preparing for their boss showing up. It could even be foreshadowing that Veranoth froze the tree in the Opening the Way cinematic. There's also huge similarities between her and the Winter Queen in looks, but also a bit of ice. I mean, ice, it kills life. It freezes the essence out of things and traps them. An antithesis to life. I don't know, who better to invade the realm of life, I suppose. It seems like that's what they're setting up. But if Farak is going after Shadowflame, then what is Veranoth going after? What's she going to do? Is she going to make a deal with the Nightmare? Take Void into herself? Become Shadow Ice? Well, maybe not. It actually could be a lot more straightforward and directly foreshadowed. In the Leveling Up campaign, when we saw the Primalist future, when we traveled there via the temporal conflux, we saw an Azeroth covered in ice. We know, of course, that the Emerald Dream has a hardcore connection to Azeroth, right? When you change things in the dream, they can change on Azeroth. Some people even think that the Emerald Dream is a blueprint for the planet. So, the path to the Primalist future could very much be the freezing of the heart of the Emerald Dream, which perhaps then could spill out onto Azeroth, causing the primal future that we visited in 10.0. Who knows? Freeze the tree and freeze the world. It would make sense. Whatever it is, though, it all plays into Iridikron's hands. And he is the final piece of the puzzle. Iridikron is definitely the boss. He manipulates his kin and has completely lost himself to the war against the aspects. From what has been set up, he has no problem using those around him, sacrificing his brother and sister. I think anything is fine as long as he wins. The way he's setting things up, Fyrakk and Vyranoth are traveling to the Isles, gaining power to fight in a war that they still think is glorious and principled. But they likely have no idea what Iridikron's true intentions are, or who Iridikron struck bargains with 20,000 years ago. After all, they just got out of stasis, and they were put in stasis before Iridikron was captured, perhaps even before Iridikron struck that bargain. So if Iridikron has not told them what bargain he struck, they have no way of knowing. And this, of course, is where we see the huge similarities between Iridikron and Neltharion. Both gained their power from the earth. Both made terrible bargains for more power. Yet Neltharion made his with a twisted sense of honor. After thousands of years, he only gave in to the void when it was to protect the world from the incarnates. Whereas Iridikron made bargains with some unknown power or entity just to keep the war against the aspects going. So it's clear he will do anything to fulfill his own desire. Pure destruction. Maybe he's working towards a larger goal, but if he is, we don't necessarily understand it. It could also be the case that he is a little bit of a pawn for whatever he struck that bargain with. And he's going to be willing to do that, even if it means sacrificing his brother and his sister. Which brings me to the final thought. If we do not kill Fyrakk in 10.1, we may not kill Vyranoth in 10.2, which just leaves a final confrontation with Iridikron. But the question is, what's he going to do with all of this power? I mean, maybe the other two, in Iridikron's eyes, are just pawns in his deranged plan. I imagine it's definitely that. Maybe they're just batteries and he'll somehow use their power. I mean, I don't know, Galakrond, he consumed others to get power. And speaking of Galakrond, it seems that either Galakrond will be back or we will go to him in something that involves Nosdormu turning into Morizond with Chromie and Evil Chromie, and that is all stuff that was teased by Maria Hamilton in the recent Wowcast episode. So I think that really does draw into fairly sharp focus all the things that we've talked about today. And I guess that just means, and she really did emphasize like Iridikron's big, very, very bad plan. And it makes me think that that whole point of Vyranoth and Fyrakk not knowing whatever bargain he made, I think that is going to be absolutely essential in this story. Just that, I think, unlike that situation, like they can't do a situation and just like completely mirror Deathwing. That'd be very boring. So there's going to have to be some twist on it, I think. Okay, let me know what your theories are. If you would like to get this very dope, very, very nice collectible coin, the first one we've ever done, as well as the other cool loot and a bunch of like behind-the-scenes content, early access, and all of that, you can check out the Patreon link down below. With that said, thanks. I'll see you next time.